Chapter 21, Bet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xia didn't want to give his cousin the side-eye, but he wasn't about to let other women walk all over him either, especially not the drop-dead gorgeous woman in front of him. Tang Yan wasn't just hot, she was stunning, probably mixed race. She had the beauty of a Chinese woman combined with those deep, captivating eyes from foreign women. It was perfection. Right now, Tang Yan and Yi Qingxue were locked in a stare-down, neither willing to back down. This was a fight to the finish. Bing Xian wasn't holding out hope for their team. Even just looking at the size of the other team made her feel like they were already defeated. They'd borrowed a couple players from other clubs, sure, but they were no match for the real deal from the basketball team. The points handicap sounded like a lot, but the game was long, and the other team's height was a total mismatch. "Hey there, beautiful," Xia said, breaking the tension. "How about we make a little wager too?" That the two women facing off snapped their heads towards Xia, wondering what he was up to. "A bet? I don't like betting with creeps." Tang Yan still remembered the cheesy lines he'd used when she'd first walked in. "Alright, whatever. You're gonna lose anyway." Xia acted like he didn't care, but his words were like throwing gasoline onto a fire. As the basketball team's coach and head of the department, Tang Yan wasn't about to let anyone say her team would lose. "What did you just say?" "We're not going to lose," she snapped, glaring at Xia. "So, how about that bet?" Xia pressed. "Bet it is, then." "I'm not scared," Tang Yan shot back, practically jumping at the bait. "Okay, if you lose, you become my little wife. Whenever you see me, you gotta call me hubby and give me a kiss." Xia grinned, looking at Tang Yan. "You're unbelievable." Tang Yan almost blew a gasket. "What? Look at these pearly whites." Xia flashed a smile. "Coach, he's just messing with you. Let us take him outside." The three basketball players started to move forward. "Back off!" Tang Yan yelled. "Fine, I'm in. I know I can't lose." "But what happens if you lose?" "I can't lose," Xia said with confidence. "No way. You have to say what you have to do if you lose," Tang Yan said. She'd seen shameless guys before, but Xia was in a league of his own. "Alright, fine. If I lose, I'll suffer a little. Whenever I see you, I gotta call you adorable little wife and ask for a kiss," Xia said with mock solemnity. "You're disgusting," Tang Yan said, trying to kick Xia. Seeing Tang Yan's anger, the three basketball players behind her started to feel sorry for Xia. They all knew how terrifying Tang Yan could be when she got mad. She had a black belt in Taekwondo. Just as everyone expected to see Xia getting knocked on his ass, they saw that he'd caught Tang Yan's leg, and he was shamelessly using his other hand to grab onto her shapely leg. "Aw!" A super loud shriek echoed through the hotel, making the waiters stop in their tracks. "Punk, you dare to insult our coach!" The three hulking players charged at Xia. They were huge and moving fast, but Xia wasn't worried. He dodged one of the punches and then pulled Tang Yan into the way, putting her between him and the fist. The tall guy couldn't stop his punch now. At this moment, Xia placed his right hand directly on Tang Yan's back, and took Tang Yan in his arms and turned around in a circle, dodging the man's punch. However, Tang Yan was completely lying in Xia's arms at this time, and Xia's hand squeezed Tang Yan's body on purpose. It all happened so fast that even Yi Qingxue and Bing Xian were stunned, but Yi Qingxue snapped out of it first. "Stop it! What are you doing, Xia? Let her go." Hearing Yi Qingxue, Xia had no choice but to let go of Tang Yan. He hadn't gotten enough of the hug, but since his cousin had spoken up, he had to back off. Tang Yan stood up and tried to slap Xia, but he grabbed her hand. "You're trying to assault your husband," he said. "You're getting on my last nerve." "Fine, I'm in. If you lose, you have to run naked around the basketball court," Tang Yan said, planting her hands on her hips. "Deal," Xia said with a grin. Let's go. I'm getting takeout, Tang Yen said, storming out of the hotel with her team behind her. Hey, I asked you to help me, and you just said you'd try your best. Now that you're getting a hot wife, you're all fired up to win. You're a dog who'd sell his sister for a bone, Yi Qingxue looked at Xia Xia accusingly. Earlier, when she told Xia Xia to make sure they won, he'd given her a half-hearted "I'll try." Now, he was making bets with Tang Yen. Wrong. As hot as she is, she can only be a side piece, Xia Xia said with a serious look. Ugh. You've gotten too big for your britches, looking for mistresses now. Don't you know she's your big sister's rival? Yi Qingxue punched Xia Xia, not daring to dodge. If he evaded her once, she'd never let it go. What should you do when someone slanders you, insults you, looks down on you, laughs at you, bullies you, and hates you? Xia Xia said with a straight face. You punch him again, beat him down, knock him out, stomp him, and when you're done, stare at him. Cousin, don't you believe in me? Xia Xia gave a mysterious smile. Bing Xian looked at Xia Xia curiously. She'd heard Yi Qingxue talk about him, but since she'd met him, she realized that what she'd heard was completely different from the real deal. Tang Yen was about to explode when she left the hotel. She swore to herself that she would win today's game. The Jianghai University basketball team wasn't about to lose to a scrub team. She was going to bury Yi Qingxue's team. If everyone had enough energy, she would score 120 points. She wanted to not only humiliate Yi Qingxue, but also make that annoying guy run around naked. Coach, don't worry. We'll take good care of the art club guys. We'll make sure their score stays in the single digits, one of the team members said confidently. Lots of people play basketball, but the talented ones who make the team are the real deal. Even being a benchwarmer puts you on another level compared to those who didn't make the cut. Good. You guys better bring it out there. We have to win. I'm letting Fang Li play with you guys. Crush them. I want to see how that little girl Yi Qingxue will act up in the future, Tang Yen said angrily. Jianghai University was buzzing. Yi Qingxue, who was ranked 4th in the school's beauty contest, and Tang Yen, who was 6th, were going head-to-head. Both sides' fans were already at each other's throats, and more people were supporting Yi Qingxue. Tang Yen had come on the scene later, and once people heard about the basketball game, Yi Qingxue's fans got even angrier, asking why Tang Yen didn't let her big, rough players compete against Yi Qingxue's team in a poetry slam. Others said that the basketball club guys were the real men, all handsome, and that the girls liked them a lot, so their voices were loud. Everyone was waiting for the basketball game that afternoon. Art department versus basketball department. Hua, you need to do something. If those two keep acting up like this, it's going to make the school look bad, Dao Tian, the vice president of the student union, said anxiously. Hua was well known around Jianghai University. The guys called her Sister Hua, the girls called her Sister Kiss, and she was also the student council president. What can I do? You know how those two are. They've always hated each other. Now Qingxue has accepted the basketball challenge. How is she going to win? Even if she gets some help from other departments, she can't compete with real basketball players. Hua complained. Yi Qingxue was good friends with her, but Tang Yen was alright too. She couldn't really help the art department go up against the basketball department. She was the student council president, and even if she did look for someone, it was impossible to find someone who could compete with the basketball team unless she hired a professional, which would only make Yi Qingxue look even more embarrassed. Tang Yen was playing it smart. She was only letting one first-string player compete, but even the second-string players were hand-picked. The so-called 20-point handicap was nothing but an excuse. The difference in skill was so huge that they could easily lose by 200. Many people protested this unfair contest, but Yi Qingxue agreed to the challenge. The game that afternoon was going to be huge, especially for the basketball club and Tang Yen supporters. There were some supporting Yi Qingxue, but not many because nobody really believed that the art department had a chance. Xia Xia, are you confident? Yi Qingxue asked Xia Xia seriously. For my little wife, I'm gonna give it my all. Victory is mine. Xia Xia yelled, his motivation at an all-time high. Chapter 22, Star Fangli. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although Jianghai University isn't quite on par with Beijing University, it's still a well-respected school in China. The students who get in are the cream of the crop from all over the country, with over 50,000 students, including undergrads, graduate students, and postdocs. It's a big place, and in a school this old and this big, you're bound to have drama, especially when you're talking about the top 10 school beauties. They're basically campus royalty, and the elections are a huge deal every year. It's tough for freshmen to crack that top 10. Usually, the upperclassmen have a better shot. But Yi Qingxue and Tang Yan both burst onto the scene as freshmen, snagging 4th and 6th place right out of the gate. The rivalry between these two was legendary, and it led to the most talked-about basketball game Jianghai University had ever seen. Tang Yan, who coaches the basketball team, challenged the literature and arts department to a match. Having the artsy folks go up against the basketball team seemed like a joke, a guaranteed blowout, even though the basketball team said the literature and arts team just needed to stay within 20 points to win. The talent gap was way bigger than that. The basketball team's bench was stacked with the best players the school had to offer. Compared to the literature and arts crowd, it was a completely different league. Before the game even started, everyone on campus was buzzing. Even though no one thought Yi Qingxue's team had a chance, she still had a lot of supporters. They accused the basketball team of being unfair and unsportsmanlike, but nobody volunteered to play for the literature and arts department because they knew how good the basketball team was. They weren't just a school team, their regular lineup had even competed in the National League. Coach, people are saying some pretty harsh things. Should we call off the game? The basketball program relies on school funding, and this kind of backlash could hurt us. What's there to be afraid of? As long as the basketball team keeps winning, nothing else matters. Don't worry about the noise. Is Fang Li here yet? Tang Yan was not only the coach but also the head of the basketball department. She was the one who got the green light from the school for this challenge. Tang Yan became a basketball coach as a freshman. Nobody knew how she managed it, but the notoriously wild players on the team listened to her. Xia Xia, Yi Qingxue, and the others arrived at the court early. Seeing their so-called teammates, Xia Xia finally understood why everyone was backing the basketball club. The stands were packed with people waving signs and chanting slogans. They were all wearing basketball team gear. Xia Xia looked around and didn't see a single person supporting the literature and arts department. Cousin, your popularity is in the toilet. Look at this crowd. Xia Xia shook his head, looking at all of the basketball fans. Who says we don't have support? Go put up my signs, and you too, the ones who can't dribble to save your lives, put on those fake heads and be cheerleaders. Yi Qingxue glared at two members of the literature club. Yi Qingxue actually had a plan. There were 3 signs with the names of 3 people, Xia Xia, Hu Peng, and Yan Su. These were her ringers, no school branding. It probably didn't seem worth investing much money, given the literature and arts team's chances of winning. The 2 girls from the literature and arts club did as they were told. They put on the fake headgear and grabbed some colorful pom-poms. Go, literature and arts. Go, literature and arts. The most cringeworthy cheerleading squad in history was born. Summer felt like throwing up. Cousin, you gotta ditch this cheerleading squad, or I'm not playing. Summer would rather have no cheerleaders than see this. Oh, here comes the basketball team. A roar of cheers turned everyone's attention to the entrance. The basketball team jogged onto the court. As they took their seats on the bench, a group of basketball cheerleaders ran out. Their blue and white outfits and miniskirts sent the male audience into a frenzy. The Jianghai University basketball cheerleaders were all in great shape and looked amazing. The energetic dance got the crowd pumped up. Go, literature and arts. Go, literature and arts. The 2 dorks were still going through the motions. Summer was about to lose it. Cousin, I'm done. I'm going on strike. Just wait. I've got something up my sleeve. Yi Qingxue smiled mysteriously. just then, a tall guy strode through the entrance, triggering another wave of cheers. It was Fang Li, the basketball team's star player, handsome, athletic, and popular. I want flowers, and I want applause, too. I know I'm good-looking, but I just want to be a pretty boy for a little while. Fang Li struck a pose, the female fans went wild. Show off, get over here. Tang Yan yelled at Fang Li. What's up, big sis? What's a gorgeous man like me supposed to do? Fang Li held a rose to his nose and took a deep breath. Fang Li, the bigger the score, the better. If you're just gonna goof around and ruin this for me, I'll make you drink my special concoction. Tang Yan hissed in Fang Li's ear like a demon. Fang Li accidentally snapped the rose in half. His face went pale. Don't worry, sis. How many points do you want? 50. 100? The more, the better. The buzz around the basketball team was a stark contrast to the literature and arts side. There were just 2 girls in miniskirts, and there was no comparison with the cheerleaders across the court. Summer was bummed, and he lost interest in the game. Qingxue, how do I look? Just then, Bing Xian stepped out from behind the others, and when Xia looked at Bing Xian, the ability was automatically turned on. He saw it all, his X-ray vision saw everything. Shaman, why is your nose bleeding? Yi Qingxue looked at Xia Tian, confused. Cousin, I feel like I'm supercharged. Let's do this. Xia said, full of fighting spirit. Bing Xian started dancing. Her moves were simple, but they made people's hearts race. Bing Xian even busted out a difficult move. Bing Xian's legs were doing a 180-degree split. This move was nothing to Bing Xian wearing boxer shorts, but this pose was a feast for the eyes in summer with her ability open. Xia Tian's nostrils were gushing blood, not just dripping. He was losing so much blood that it scared Yi Qingxue. Yi Qingxue, you've already got someone injured before the game even starts. Now you only have 4 players left. Are you gonna forfeit? Tang Yan sneered. Otherwise, just give up now and save yourself the embarrassment of losing by a mile. But our bet still stands. If you give up, you have to call me Sister Yan every time you see me, okay? Oh, and the guy with the bloody nose has to run around the court naked. Tang Yan wasn't about to let Xia off the hook. He was rude to her in the restaurant, and she wanted to teach him a lesson. Who said we're giving up? Let's get started. I'm ready to go. Xia Xian turned his head away from Bing Xian. He was afraid he'd bleed to death. Before the game started, both sides went over their strategies. Hu Peng, you're the tallest, so you'll jump for the ball. Just play where you're comfortable. And remember to pass the ball to me when you get it. He told everyone to pass the ball to him, hoping he could carry the team against the basketball team. Xia didn't say anything. As long as they could win, he was fine with it. If this Yen Su could lead them to victory, he could sit back and relax and wouldn't have to reveal his own skills. Looking at those scrubs over there, I can't even get motivated, Fang Li said. If it weren't for Tang Yan's instructions, he wouldn't have bothered with this game. The game finally started. Hu Ping didn't disappoint. He actually got the ball, but a blue figure snatched it away the moment it hit the ground. Thwack, star, the basketball ripped through the net. It was a dunk. Star player Fang Li was living up to his reputation. He scored the first point with a dunk. The opening dunk energized the basketball team, and the crowd went wild. Chapter 23, God of Basketball. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As expected of Fang Li, he's got the skills and speed you see at the top colleges. Some folks in the stands aren't from Jianghai University, they're headhunters, always looking for the next big thing. Fang Li's performance brought cheers from the crowd, and the girls' eyes started to sparkle. Show me some love. But I'm not available. Fang Li struck a pose. Tang Yan nodded, satisfied. She'd set up that slam dunk to mess with the other team's heads, and it worked. Their morales tanked. Even Yen Su just kept shaking his head. Yan Su got the ball and dribbled fast, dodging the defense and pulling up for a clean jump shot. Textbook form, thwack, blocked. Fang Li just stuffed him big time. The ball went back to Fang Li's team, swish, 3-pointer, in just a minute, they were up by 5. The crowd went wild, but Yi Qingxue looked miserable. Down by so much, so fast. She couldn't imagine how this would end. Alright, everyone, just get me the ball, Yan Su told his team. This time, instead of hogging it, he passed to Hu Peng. Hu Peng's a big dude, draws attention. Hu Peng then tossed it back to Yan Su. Yan Su saw Fang Li, but decided against passing. In his mind, only he and Hu Peng were any good. Hu Peng was tied up, so he decided to force a shot, thump, steal. Fang Li faked him out, ripped the ball, and fired a one-handed pass down court. A teammate grabbed it, went up, and slammed it home, 7-0. The lead increased again. Xia looked disgusted with Yan Su. He could have passed, but he had to show off and didn't have the game to back it up. Yi Qingxue couldn't even watch. The game continued. By the end of the first quarter, it was 40-0. The art team looked defeated. This is a joke. Hu Peng and I can't carry these other 3, Yan Su complained. He and Hu Peng were tight, so he wasn't going to blame him. But the other 3? Fair game. What's that supposed to mean, Yan Su? We passed you the ball when you told us to. We're the reason the game is the way it is, and you say we're no good. Yeah, every time you tried to be a hotshot, Fang Li picked your pocket. Humph. Yan Su scoffed. You guys don't know the first thing about basketball. No point in arguing with you. This game is over. With you 3, we're guaranteed to lose. Like hell. We're not pushovers. Even if we lose, we'll go down fighting. The game's not over yet. How can you know we're going to lose? If we somehow win this, I'll crawl around the court and bark like a dog. Yan Su sneered. Hu Peng, I'm done. I'd rather watch these 3 get slaughtered. Yi Qingxue's face went white, but she kept quiet. She'd seen enough jerks like Yan Su. This wasn't the time for a team meltdown. If Yan Su and Hu Peng quit, they wouldn't even have 5 players. They might as well forfeit. Don't worry, Qingxue. We still have Xia, Bing Xin said, sensing her panic. But the score, and you saw the difference in skill out there, Yi Qingxue said, defeated. Xia didn't say anything, but looked at the 2 cheerleaders. You 2, give me your uniforms. I'm going in. Everyone stared. Yan Su thought they'd come begging him to play, giving him a chance to gloat. Instead, Xia was sending in a couple of cheerleaders who didn't know how to play. Xia, they don't know the first thing about the game, Yi Qingxue protested. They don't need to. They'll just stand there and watch the fun, Xia said with a smile. Tang Yen saw what was happening and yelled, Yi Qingxue, are you kidding me? Now you're putting the cheerleaders in. Yi Qingxue didn't respond, but nodded to Xia. The second quarter started. Someone passed the ball to Xia. Everyone ran down court, and then they froze. Xia jumped. What the heck was he doing? Taking off from under his own basket? Swish, clean through the net. It was a familiar sound. Then it hit them. He just scored from his own end, 40-3. Yes. Yi Qingxue and Bingxin jumped for joy. No way. Yan Su stared at Xia in disbelief. It had to be a dream. A fluke? Fang Li said, confused. What's with this kid? Tang Yen muttered, stunned. The crowd went nuts. What a lucky shot. The headhunters who were about to leave stopped and kept watching. Okay, everyone, don't panic. He just got lucky, Fang Li said, trying to regroup. He charged down the court, his team passing crisply. Finally, the ball came back to him. He'd take a jump shot and get the momentum back, thwack, blocked. The crowd went silent. Fang Li was over 6.5 feet tall with arms like tree trunks. It should have been impossible, but Xia just blocked his shot, swish, clean again, still from behind the half-court line, 40-6, the arena was dead quiet. When Xia blocked the shot, it looked like he'd jumped 7 feet in the air. No way, that was just luck, and this time, no one believed it. You can't be that lucky twice in a row, especially from that distance. Time out. Tang Yan called time. You were amazing. Yi Qingxue jumped up and kissed Xia on the cheek. Yan Su's face turned green. He wanted to disappear. He'd been there for the 40-0 disaster, then bragged about quitting, and now Xia was pulling off miracles. Seeing Yi Qingxue kiss Xia drove him nuts. He wanted her to beg him to play, but Xia was stealing the show. Tang Yan was drawing up a new plan. When play resumed, she had 2 guys double-teaming Xia. Shut him down. With Xia contained, Fang Li saw an open road. The other 4 were like practice dummies. He took off for a 3-pointer, wanting to erase the embarrassment of the last play, thwack, another block. It was Xia again. Somehow, Xia, who was boxed in by 2 guys near the free throw line, stuffed Fang Li. Swish, that the ball went in. 40-9, the crowd was speechless. 3 shots, all from behind half-court, and he blocked the star player twice. Fang Li's team couldn't seem to score. That's him, the girl in the stands remembered. That's the guy from Yi Qingxue's birthday party. The other team was starting to crack. They couldn't guard him with 2 men, so they switched to 3, but the score kept shrinking. By the end of the second quarter, it was 40-48, Tang Yan was scrambling to come up with a new strategy. Yi Qingxue and Bing Xian were bringing water and massaging Xia's legs. At the start of the third quarter, the other team's new plan was clear. 4 guys were surrounding Xia, blocking every possible lane. That left Fang Li to carry the load. Fang Li didn't think Xia could escape that kind of defense, so he focused on dribbling, looking to dunk and get their heads back in the game. Thwack, a demon rose up in front of him. He couldn't believe it, but the ball wasn't in his hands anymore. Swish, clean through the net again. 40-51, the game wore on, and the score became 40-81, the other team's morale had evaporated. The crowd was silent, the cheerleaders stayed on the sidelines. Some people were recording the game on their phones and posting it online, but they couldn't get a clear shot of Xia's face. It was always blurred by movement or obscured by a bow of his head. The game was over. The final score, 40-111, all 3-pointers. Xia made 37 of them, and everyone went in. Everyone was stunned. Yan Su tried to slip away, but the women from the art department cut him off. They'd all heard him say he'd crawl around the court and bark if they won. Chapter 24, Father #039, S work. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the game, the entire basketball team was bummed out, even the cheerleaders looked deflated. The fans, though, were buzzing. They'd seen a great game. A female headhunter smiled, already moving on. That kid's got something. Get me some info on him. She turned and left the stands. Nearby, a girl with fiery red lips watched Xia below, a frown creasing her brow. There was always something mysterious about him. He'd made a splash at Yi Qingxue's birthday party, and now he'd single-handedly taken down the basketball team. She wondered who he was and why she'd never heard of him before. She'd definitely grill Yi Qingxue about him later. Meanwhile, the Department of Literature and Art was going wild. They'd scored a major victory. Their 4 guys had faced off against the basketball team and won, giving them serious bragging rights. Hey, Yan Su, one of the Lit and Art guys called out, didn't you say you'd crawl around the court barking like a dog if we won? Humph, just luck, Yan Su scoffed, clearly annoyed. He thought it was a fluke. So, you gonna back down? Who knows what kind of shady stuff you pulled to win? Maybe you were in cahoots with the basketball team, Yen Su sneered at them all. Wow, looks like the jocks aren't so tough after all. What's so great about you artsy types? When you need something done, you come crawling to the sports department. You should stick to your books and leave the real stuff to us. How about you try keeping up with our training, huh? Yen Su shoved his way through the crowd and headed out. If we win, you'll do the dog thing around the field, right? Xia asked, a slight smile playing on his lips. He hated guys like Yen Su, all talk and no game. Fine. We've got a fitness test. If you can beat our guys, I'll bark like a dog. With that, Yen Su disappeared down the hallway. Okay, tomorrow afternoon then, Xia said casually. Xia, don't bother with him, Yi Qingxue advised. I don't even know him. He just showed up when he heard we were playing the basketball team and offered to help out. Today was a huge win for the lit and art department. Yi Qingxue had planned to throw a party, but Xia said he had something to do and took off. Tang Yen was in a foul mood, but also impressed. She'd lost the game, but she'd also discovered a potentially amazing player. With the right training, he could be a superstar. Now she had to face the music. If she lost, she had to call Yi Qingshue's sister Xue and that jerk Xia hubby. The thought made her want to gag, but if she didn't pay up, she'd look like a sore loser. Xia, what are you doing? Yi Qingxue asked, seeing him head toward the other team's locker room. Going to see my little wife, he replied without turning around. Seriously? It's enough that you won. Don't rub it in, Yi Qingxue said, not really wanting Tang Yen to call her sister Xue. It felt like bullying. She was just messing with her. Hey there, wifey. Xia grinned, approaching Tang Yen. Tang Yen was speechless. She'd never met anyone so shameless. It was bad enough that she lost, but he had to come and make her say it. She figured she'd just avoid him in the future. Hey, punk. Watch how you talk to her. Fang Li, still smarting from the loss, was ready to fight. He knew they'd lost fair and square, but that didn't mean the guy could come strutting in. For my little wife's sake, I'll let it slide, Xia said dismissively, not even looking at Fang Li. Knock it off, Xia. Let's go, Yi Qingxue said, wanting to avoid a scene. Tang Yen, forget about our feud. And the bet's off. What do you mean? You think I can't take a loss? Tang Yen wasn't one to back down. Sister Xue, kiss your husband. With that, she ran out of the arena, totally embarrassed. Whatever, let's go, Xia said, walking out dejectedly. He hopped in a cab and headed back to the old house. Yen Su was furious. He'd only helped the lit and art department to impress Yi Qingxue, and now he'd embarrassed himself in front of her. He couldn't let it go, especially the guys who were writing him about crawling around and barking. He hadn't done it, but he still felt like a fool. Ministerly, he whined to the head of the sports department, those lit and art guys are jerks. I was just trying to help, and they treated me like dirt. They insulted me and said our sports department was a joke. If they can beat the basketball team, they think they can beat us at everything. Yen Su was exaggerating like crazy. There are only 4 guys in the lit and art department, and they're acting all high and mighty. They're asking for it, Ministerly growled, known for his temper. Minister, you should have seen them, especially their hired gun. He said you were nothing, that you weren't worthy to lick his boots. Yen Su was especially jealous of Xia because Yi Qingxue had kissed him after he scored. He really said that? Ministerly asked, his face turning red. Yeah, and he said he could take on our whole department, that our fitness training was a joke and he could beat all our best guys. That was the last straw. Yen Su, get me a challenge letter. I'm going to teach that punk a lesson. Back at the old house, Xia waited about an hour before the man in white appeared. He was still wearing the same clothes and carrying his sword. He never seemed to change, but his clothes were always spotless. Master, you're here, Xia said respectfully. The man in white was a friend of his father's and had saved his life, so he naturally respected him. Your father never talked about his martial arts because he didn't want you to follow in his footsteps. But you've already stepped into this world, so I'll fulfill my promise to him. The man in white looked at Xia. From today on, I'll teach you the immortal steps of the clouds and the Lingxi finger. Lingxi finger? Xia had only seen that in movies. It was Lu Xiaofeng's signature move. He never expected the man in white to teach it to him. Yes, your father's most famous techniques. The man in white looked at Xia. My father's? So he was a master. Xia hoped to learn something about his father from the man in white. I never practiced those two skills myself, so I can only teach you the methods and the inner strength techniques. The man in white didn't take the bait. He wouldn't talk about his father. Master, are you saying my father's skills weren't as good as yours, so you didn't bother to learn them? Xia asked. I didn't learn them for one simple reason, and you should remember this: you can't chew more than you can swallow. It's better to master one skill than to dabble in many. The man in white explained. Thank you for your teaching, Master, Xia said. The immortal steps of the clouds are based on the Book of Changes and the 8 trigrams. The Lingxi finger focuses on acupuncture points and precise attacks. The man in white explained the origins and techniques of the two skills. As Xia began learning them, he finally understood why his father had taught him so many seemingly unrelated things since he was a child. He hadn't understood it then, but now he realized that someone who didn't understand the Book of Changes couldn't possibly master the immortal steps. And the Lingxi finger required not only knowledge of acupuncture points, but also amazing eyesight and an understanding of human anatomy. It was impossible for ordinary people, but for Xia, who had been studying these things since childhood, it was surprisingly easy. It was as if his father had been preparing him for this all along, paving the way for this very moment. You have a talent I've never seen before. You will definitely carry on your father's legacy. The man in white taught Xia for an hour before leaving Xia to practice on his own. Chapter 25, Dare to Mess with My Cousin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the man in white left, Xia kept training. His father might not have taught him martial arts directly, but he gave him the best possible foundation. Most people starting at his age would have limited potential, no matter how hard they worked. But Xia was different. Even though his father never taught him any moves, he instilled a natural instinct for martial arts in him from a young age. The necklace had transformed his body, making him physically exceptional. He had this immense power inside him, like a vast treasure, but he lacked the techniques to use it. That's why he was helpless against the quicksand guys. What he needed was real martial arts training. The Manyan Xianbu and Lingxi Yiji were his father's legacy, and even a master like the man in white had acknowledged their power. Xia couldn't even imagine the extent of the man in white's strength. He never saw him move, and yet the 2 quicksand members were dead. He used to think that no martial art could be faster than a bullet. The quicksand guys had guns, but they died before they even had a chance to fire. Against a true master, a gun was useless. Xia had only recently started practicing Manyan Xianbu and had barely scratched the surface. Time flew by. He lost track of how long he'd been training, completely absorbed in it. It's you, my big apple. Bingxin. How did you get my number? Tell me what happened, slowly. Okay, I'll be right there. Hanging up, Xia took off. Instead of waiting for a ride, he started running. He was finally realizing the benefits of Manyan Xianbu, fast and powerful. Bing Xian's call had been frantic. Their group was at Emperor KTV, surrounded, and her cousin, Yi Qingxue, was arguing with someone. Damn it, if anyone lays a hand on my cousin, they'll regret it. His cousin was the closest person he had. Anyone who hurt Yi Qingxue would pay. Xia's running speed was incredible, several times faster than before. If he ran the 100-meter dash at this pace, he'd crush the existing records. At Emperor KTV. Team Leaderly, how can you just stand there watching this happen? Yi Qingxue said, looking at Team Leader Li with disgust. Today, the art group had been celebrating their basketball win, but Team Leader Li and Yan Su from the sports department had shown up looking for trouble. They had challenged the art group and Yi Qingxue hadn't wanted to accept, not wanting to involve Xia. While they were arguing, some guys harassed a woman from the art group when she went to the bathroom. Yi Qingxue and the others went to help, but the guys were a bunch of lowlifes who wouldn't listen to reason. When they saw Yi Qingxue, they got nasty and insisted she drink with their brother leopard. Yi Qingxue had thought that Team Leader Li and the others were decent people, but they were just making things worse. Not only did they refuse to help, but they also made demands. Team Leader Li wanted Yi Qingxue to accept their challenge, while Yan Su wanted her to be his girlfriend in exchange for help. That's what led to this. Yi Qingxue, we're not trying to be jerks. If you agree to our terms, we'll take care of these guys, Team Leader Li said. He and the others from the sports department were strong. If they helped, the lowlifes wouldn't dare to do anything. I'm warning you, stay out of this. This is Brother Leopard's turf. You'll regret it if you don't, one of the lowlifes warned. They knew they'd be in trouble if those guys interfered. I was wrong about you, Team Leader Li, Yi Qingxue said, glaring at them. Hey, you should feel lucky that Brother Leopard noticed you. Just have a few drinks with him, and we won't bother your friends, one of the lowlifes said, eyeing Yi Qingxue. I don't even know him. Why should I drink with him? Yi Qingxue refused. Don't be like that. It's an honor for Brother Leopard to want to drink with you. You better listen to us, or my boys will get rough, he said with a sneer. I already called the cops. They'll be here soon, Yi Qingxue said. The cops? Ha! Brother Leopard's got connections. One phone call, and no cops will show up, the lowlifes said proudly. That's why they hung around Brother Leopard, because he could get away with anything. Don't be so cocky. There's gotta be law and order in this world, Yi Qingxue said angrily. Law and order? You want to talk about law and order here? Lu, what's she talking about? Brother Leopard stepped out of a booth, followed by a burly guy with a beer belly who was clearly his general. What a bunch of garbage, Brother Leopard said, glaring at the lowlifes. He turned to Team Leader Li and Yan Su. What's your deal? You think you can come in here and cause trouble? That he smashed a bottle on the ground. At the sound, dozens of lowlifes swarmed in from all directions. The KTV security guards blocked the hallway to keep people from taking pictures or watching. Seeing them, Team Leader Li and Yan Su paled. There were only 10 of them. They had thought they could handle the lowlifes, but they didn't expect so many. There was no way 10 of them could fight that many people. Brother Leopard, right? There must be some kind of misunderstanding. We don't even know them, Yan Su said quickly. He could tell that these guys were just unemployed thugs. Brother Leopard especially looked like someone you didn't want to mess with. If they got into a fight, several of them would get hurt, and he had already seen guys with knives outside. Fine. Get out then, Brother Leopard said, not mincing words. Humph, Team Leader Li snorted, looking sour, but they left the group surrounded, leaving only the art group behind. The art group had 16 people, 4 guys and 12 girls, but the 4 guys were no match for the women. After Team Leader Li and the others left, Yi Qingxue and her group were completely isolated. She knew the thugs meant what they said earlier. Even if the cops showed up, Brother Leopard's man Lu would block them. Lu looked like he knew a lawyer, and lawyers were crafty. Girlie, I advise you to have a couple of drinks with me. Then this whole thing can be over, otherwise, I won't let any of you leave here, Brother Leopard said, looking at the group. My boys really like college girls. Without a threat, he meant that if Yi Qingxue didn't come to a private room for a drink with him, he would let his guys attack her friends. Sis Shui, you can't agree to this, one of the 4 guys from the art group said. They might not be as tough as the sports department guys, but they were still men. They stood in front of the girls. We won't let them take you, one of the guys said. They braced themselves. Just a bunch of wimps, Brother Leopard said coldly. Go rough them up. Yi Qingshue's face became even more ashen. Although the guys blocked her, she felt no safer. They were completely surrounded, there was no way to escape. But if she left with them, the consequences would be terrible. Qingxue, I already called Xia, Bing Xian whispered. Are you crazy? What good will Xia do? Why didn't you call Sister Kiss? Yi Qingshuo asked anxiously. I did, but she didn't pick up. I had no choice but to call Xia, Bing Xian said, frowning. She knew she should have called Hua Kiss. What are we gonna do? Yi Qingshuo asked anxiously. She didn't notice that Bing Xian had clenched her fists. By now, the lowlifes had closed in on the 4 art group guys, who stood their ground. Suddenly, a loud crash came from outside, grabbing everyone's attention. Cousin, where are you? Xia's voice called from outside. Xia, we're here. Bing Xian called. Just as she spoke, Xia was suddenly there next to her. This place was like a fortress surrounded by armed men, but how did Xia get in? But Bing Xian relaxed her fist. You dare mess with my cousin? Xia turned toward Brother Leopard and Lu, the obvious ringleaders. Chapter 26, Summer Memes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The sudden warmth of summer cheered Bing Xian, Yi Qingshuo, and the others, but Yi Qingshuo immediately felt a twinge of worry. What if something happened to Summer? They were already in a tight spot. There were 40 or 50 thugs hanging around, and they were just looking for trouble. Even with Summer, they were only 5 guys. Brother Leopard didn't even blink at the new arrival. In Emperor KTV, he was king, and no one could mess with him. Punk, how'd you get in here? Brother Leopard eyed Summer suspiciously. He was sure his boys had this place locked down. How'd this kid just pop up? Summer, what are you doing here? Yi Qingshuo asked, her voice laced with worry. Someone was giving you a hard time. What was I supposed to do, stay away? Summer shrugged. But you can't just walk in here alone. Now you're in trouble too. Yi Qingshuo was worried he'd get dragged into this mess. Don't sweat it. I got this. Summer gave her a reassuring smile. For some reason, seeing that expression, Yi Qingshuo felt a wave of calm wash over her. She didn't say anything. She knew Summer had changed. He wasn't the pushover cousin he used to be. Maybe her mom was right. Maybe Summer was destined for something bigger. Bing Xian watched Summer with growing curiosity. Every time she saw him, he seemed more and more incredible. Ever since they met, he'd been one surprise after another. Summer, what color am I wearing today? Bing Xian asked out of the blue. It seemed like a strange question, but only she, Yi Qingshuo, and Summer knew what was really going on. I think you look better in something cute. Summer smiled, turning his head away. Bing Xian glanced down, instantly understanding. Summer was right again. She hadn't worn something cutesy today. She'd gone with black instead. His simple words sent a shiver down her spine. She almost thought Summer had planted a camera on her. Even if someone screamed for help in here, nobody outside would hear them, right? Summer asked Brother Leopard casually. Humph. Brother Leopard scoffed. He'd tried talking to Summer before, but the kid ignored him. He didn't like that one bit. You got that right, punk. You could scream your head off and nobody would give a damn. Unless you want her to play nice and have a drink with me. Then we'll see how I deal with you. So the cops can't get in? Summer pressed. Of course not. Don't even think about the cops showing up. With me here, I'll make sure justice is served, Brother Leopard style. Lu's meaning was clear, no cops were getting through him. He was only looking out for Brother Leopard. As for Yi Qingshuo and her friends, he couldn't care less. Yi Qingshuo was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. He'd finally found her, and he wasn't letting her go. With Brother Leopard around, he could finally have his fantasy. They'd figure out how to clean up the mess later. That was Brother Leopard's specialty. He'd seen Brother Leopard's methods before. The guy was a real piece of work. Brother Leopard had messed with college girls before, but he'd never seen one as gorgeous as Yi Qingxue. He secretly vowed he wouldn't let her slip through his fingers. Dealing with a whole group of college kids at once would be a pain, but he knew how to make sure they kept their mouths shut. As for the beauty in front of him, he wouldn't let go of. Summer hated trouble. He'd already disabled all the security cameras, and now that he heard the other side say the cops couldn't get in, he could finally relax. Good. In that case, even if I kill all of you, the police wouldn't have a clue it was me. You got a death wish, kid. Brother Leopard snarled. I've seen some cocky people, but you take the cake. You're about to die and you're still running your mouth. Brother Leopard, don't get worked up. Have some of the guys break his legs first, teach him some manners. Then I'll find a lawyer to cook up some charges and get him thrown in jail. He'll get taken care of, in there, if you know what I mean. Lou smirked, enjoying the thought of what was to come. Cousin, you guys go inside. Summer held the door of the box open. But what about you? Yi Qingxue looked at him, concern etched on her face. I'll be fine. I'll just get distracted if you guys are out here. Summer didn't want them getting hurt. Remember, no matter what you hear, don't come out. Brother Xia, some of us can help. The four guys from the literature club said, stepping forward. No need. You four should go in and relax. This'll be over quick. They didn't want to, but Summer's mind was made up. They had to go back to the box. The hallway was now swarming with enemies. Brother Leopard gave the order, and the whole crew charged at Summer. Time to try out my cloud steps and finger thrust. Summer smirked. His body shifted slightly. In his eyes, these guys moved in slow motion. He knew exactly where to strike, and a single touch could bring a man to his knees. He had to take out the ringleader first. He dived into the crowd like a fish into water, his cloud steps making him seem untouchable. His hands flashed, targeting the pressure points of the closest two thugs. Ever since he was a kid, he'd known the location of every nerve cluster in the human body, and with his enhanced vision, he could pinpoint them with ease. Those pressure point techniques in the movies weren't just made up. Every pressure point had its purpose, and a sharp blow could cause temporary paralysis. In a heartbeat, 10 men were down. Even Brother Leopard was stunned. He'd heard that people knew kung fu in real life, but he didn't expect it to be this powerful. Go get him. Whoever takes him down gets to be the little boss. That with that kind of reward on the line, they charged again. They wanted to use their numbers, but it was useless against Summer. His cloud steps made him impossible to corner, and this was a narrow hallway. No matter how many people there were, most of them couldn't even reach him. He was surrounded, but only a few could actually throw a punch. Ha, there you are. Summer slipped through the crowd and appeared in front of Brother Leopard. Brother Leopard was no slouch. He pulled a dagger from his waistband and slashed at Summer, but just as the blade was about to pierce him, Summer's fingers clamped down on it. Snap. Summer broke the blade between his fingers. Everyone froze. Summer didn't give them a chance to react. He punched Brother Leopard's arm, and with a sickening crack, broke it clean. Brother Leopard howled. Lu Mao saw his chance and tried to slip away. The power of the cloud step is insane. Summer was genuinely impressed with the cloud step's speed. He'd crossed the room and taken down Brother Leopard in 3 seconds. He was 20 meters away from the leopard. Under normal circumstances, that would be impossible to cover that ground with so many people blocking the way. I think you said nobody could hear anything in here, right? Summer grabbed Brother Leopard's arm and ripped it clean off. Iowa, Brother Leopard screamed like a stuck pig. Quit your yelling. Nobody can hear you. Summer gave him a sickly sweet smile. This was Brother Leopard's own logic, word for word. Let go of me, or I'll kill you. The pain was driving Brother Leopard insane. Summer didn't reply, just kept smiling, then ripped his arm off again, only to reattach it. Rip, attach, rip, attach. After 10 repetitions, Brother Leopard passed out. but Summer knew how to wake him up with pressure points. Brother Leopard's henchmen were frozen in terror. The guys closest to the leopard were shaking like leaves, and one had wet himself. They were used to roughing people up, but they'd never seen anything like this. Even the stubborn Brother Leopard was pleading for mercy. "Please, big brother. I beg you, let me go." Brother Leopard was on his knees, tears and snot running down his face. "If I just let you go, wouldn't I look like a fool?" Summer reattached Brother Leopard's arm, only to rip it off and attach it again. After another 10 rounds, Brother Leopard was too weak to even beg. The method of torture has frightened Brother Leopard's men, and none of them dared to run away. "Okay, I've had my fun. Let them go." Summer finally let go of Brother Leopard's arm. "Let him go, just let him go." Brother Leopard was covered in sweat, he didn't even have the strength to speak. Seeing Summer walk toward the door, none of Brother Leopard's men dared to stop him. "I'll give you 1 minute." A minute later, Summer opened the door with a smile. All taken care of. Chapter 27, Into the Police Station. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The art group filed out of the karaoke room, oblivious to the commotion outside, though they'd heard the sounds of pain. Yi Qingxue had tried to rush out several times, but Bing Xian held her back. They were all confused, wondering why Xia suddenly declared everything resolved. When they emerged, Brother Leopard's crew was already hauling him away. His goons and the security guards were gone too, leaving the hallway empty. "Where'd everyone go?" Yi Qingxue asked, glancing around. She'd heard screams, but now there wasn't a soul in sight. "Maybe they went to church," Xia said with a slight smile. "Really?" Yi Qingxue looked skeptical. "Qingxue, let's just get out of here," Bing Xian urged. "Yeah, let's go. Everyone, head home. I'll fill you in on what happened later," Yi Qingxue said, still furious at the sports department's antics. One by one, they left Emperor KTV. Xia found it strange that despite the major incident, the other karaoke rooms were still packed and the manager never showed his face. It was like nothing had happened. As Xia and Yi Qingxue exited Emperor KTV, he finally understood why. 3 cop cars were waiting at the intersection. As soon as Xia came out of the KTV, they converged from 3 different directions, having clearly been lying in wait for him. "You're suspected of assault. You need to come with us for questioning," an officer said, pulling out his handcuffs. "Hold on. Just assisting with an investigation doesn't require handcuffs, does it?" Xia said coldly. If Yi Qingxue and Bing Xian weren't there, he wouldn't be surrendering without a fight. He already spotted Mr. Liu in the back of one of the cars, the clear orchestrator of this setup, having hired a lawyer in advance. Going with them meant trouble, but he couldn't risk Yi Qingxue and Bing Xian getting hurt. "No, we received a report that you're extremely dangerous, so the handcuffs are necessary." The officer wasn't trying to be cruel, but he wouldn't budge on the handcuffs. "Extremely dangerous. Fine, I'll go, but I need to see them leave safely," Xia conceded. "No, you're coming with us now." The officer remained firm. "Don't push me," Xia said, his gaze hardening as he stared the officer down. The officer felt like he was being targeted by a predator, his back breaking out in a cold sweat. Okay, he stammered. "You two go home first." "I'll be fine," Xia said with a reassuring smile. He needed to ensure Yi Qingxue and Bing Xian left safely, otherwise, the KTV employees might cause problems later. "But you..." Yi Qingxue looked at Xia worriedly. "Don't worry, I'll be fine." Xia hailed a cab for Yi Qingxue and Bing Xian, giving it a quick scan with his enhanced vision to make sure it was safe. Then, he climbed into the police car. "Qingxue, what do we do?" Bing Xian asked. "Let me call my mom." Yi Qingxue dialed her mother's number, but there was no answer. "What's going on today?" "My cousin's not answering, and now mom's not answering either," Yi Qingxue said, frowning. "Looks like I need to head home." In the back of the police car, Xia closed his eyes, focusing. He needed to be prepared for whatever was coming. With a high-powered lawyer and the mysterious Mr. Lu involved, they wouldn't let him off easily, at the police station. Name. Xia, he replied lazily, slouched on the stool. Do you know where you are? Police station. Still acting cocky, even knowing you're in the police station. Answer my questions honestly. I'm here to cooperate with the investigation, but I'd like to know what crime I'm suspected of. And I have been answering your questions, Xia said, sitting up straight. Aggravated assault. 13 people have been hospitalized, and 1 is in the ICU. What does that have to do with me? You don't think I put that many people in the hospital single-handedly, do you? Xia denied it flatly. Admitting guilt would mean a life behind bars. You'd better cooperate, or you'll never see the light of day again. Officer, are you threatening me? Or do you have any actual evidence that I did it? Xia said with disdain. At that moment, Mr. Lu and another inspector walked into the interrogation room. Mr. Lu signaled for the interrogating officer to leave them alone. Seeing Mr. Lu, Xia knew the real show was about to begin. Mr. Lu gave the other inspector a look, and the man temporarily turned off the interrogation camera. Xia shook his head at their antics. He was certainly learning a lot today. Punk, you're mine now. We'll see how I deal with you. If you cooperate, I'll have the lawyer drop a couple of charges. If you don't, you'll rot in prison for the rest of your life. Mr. Lu looked at Xia with a sneer, remembering the humiliation he suffered at Emperor KTV and how Xia broke Brother Leopard's arm. Brother Leopard and Li Tu were like blood brothers. If he didn't handle this well, his own future was toast. That's what Brother Leopard said before, Xia replied with a smile. You dare bring up Brother Leopard? You ruined everything I had planned, Mr. Lu said. I was counting on Brother Leopard for something today, and you beat him half to death. Oh, sounds like I did you a favor, Xia said, smiling slightly. For Xia, foiling the enemy's plans was a delight, and something he enjoyed doing the most. Though handcuffed, he wasn't worried. Boy, kneel down, kowtow 3 times, and beg me not to ruin your life, and maybe you won't have to spend the rest of it in prison, Mr. Lu said, feeling he had lost too much face already. You kneel down, kowtow 3 times, and beg me not to ruin your life, and maybe you won't have to spend the rest of it in prison, Xia mocked. You think I'm kidding? I have the best lawyer money can buy. I'll bury you. Mr. Lu shouted, slamming his hand on the table. I believe in justice, Xia replied, smiling. The lawyer stood up and walked toward Xia, intending to deliver a sneak attack from behind, but Xia seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. In a flash, the handcuffs reappeared, this time on the lawyer's wrists. What? How did you do that? Mr. Lu's face was a mask of disbelief. Xia's handcuffs had vanished. Mr. Lu, who had planned to teach Xia a lesson, was completely stunned. Superman? Had he just witnessed a real-life superhero? In the KTV, surrounded by 50 guys, Brother Leopard was seriously injured. Now, at the police station, after being handcuffed, this happens. Mr. Lu and the lawyer were speechless, completely blindsided. What are you going to do? Mr. Lu frantically pressed the alarm button in the interrogation room, setting off alarms throughout the entire building. Just then, Yi Qingxue finally got through to her mother. Mom! Why weren't you answering? Yi Qingxue said, relieved. She hadn't found her mother at home, and it had only intensified her worries about Xia. What is it, Qingxue? Why are you in such a panic? Xia was arrested by the cops. Yi Qingxue quickly explained what had happened. I see. Don't worry. Everything will be fine with Xia. Chapter 28, Super Ant. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xia Tian's aunt is Yi Wanqing. She's in a room right now with a couple. Mrs. Yi, what's going on? The woman asked. It's just details, setting things up, Yi Wanqing replied, looking at the couple. Okay, if that's what Bing Bing wants. I'll give her a shot and assign someone to help. If she pulls it off, I'll hire her on the spot. After leaving the room, Yi Wanqing dialed a number. Mr. Shui, hello. Mrs. Yi. What can I do for you? It's not like we have much business together. Mr. Shui's words were carefully chosen. I need you to get someone out of trouble. Save someone? You know I can only get involved with serious business, Mr. Shui replied respectfully. The person is Sheen's son. What? Long's kid? What happened to him? A note of panic entered Mr. Shui's voice. A cop picked him up. It involves a guy named Lu, and apparently a lawyer's involved too. If you don't move fast, he's gonna be in deep trouble. Yi Wanqing warned, and Mr. Shui hung up immediately. Meanwhile, Xia was cornered at Game J. Seeing the crowd, Xia didn't say a word. He was confident he could escape if he took a few of them down, but they hadn't made any mistakes, and he couldn't bring himself to hurt innocents. Arrest him! Lu yelled. I brought a lawyer. This guy's a major problem. Xia didn't resist. They chained his hands and feet. Handcuffs wouldn't hold him, so they used iron chains. He was taken away right then and there. He was taken to the betting area behind Game J. The small room already held 9 others. When Xia was brought in, everyone eyed him like prey. Lu wants you to take special care of him, the lawyer told the men in the cage, then left. Before he did, he locked the door from the outside and blocked the ventilation. All the guards went to eat. One of the men approached Xia. New meat? I wouldn't mess with me, Xia said coldly. Lu must have sent him here to sick these guys on him. Though chained, they took their time. They figured Xia couldn't resist. This is Huwu's territory now, kid. Someone paid me good money to make you miserable. The bald guy, Huwu, glared at Xia. Don't worry, I never kill anyone, but you'll wish you were dead. I'll give you one chance. Go back where you were, and I'll let you walk, Xia said, closing his eyes. You're tough for a dead man. If I don't cripple you, I'll call you daddy. Huwu advanced. He didn't believe Xia could take them all on. Just as Huwu's fist was about to connect, Xia moved. Incredibly, the chains on his hands and feet were gone. He gripped the iron cage, twisted his hands, moved his fingers, and with a snap, the iron bar clattered to the floor. He squeezed through the opening. It all happened in an instant. Huwu screamed, and several others joined in. You don't need to call him daddy. I wouldn't want a son like you. Xia looked up at the iron-barred vent and smiled. He wasn't staying here any longer. He'd broken the right hand of Huwu and the others. They'd probably never use them again. It was a minor punishment. If they didn't learn, their fate would be far worse. He wouldn't hurt innocents, but he wouldn't hesitate to punish the violent and cruel. He had warned them, at Mr. Shui's house. I need to handle this myself. Mr. Shui made 2 calls, one to his secretary and another to Huang Tu. Hearing Lu's name, he knew who was behind it. The most infuriating people in Jianghai City were Deputy Head Li and his underling Lu. They'd been causing trouble together for years, always covering their tracks, so even Mr. Shui couldn't touch them. Several people had reported them, but they'd colluded with a lawyer, and the witnesses backed down. Mr. Shui knew that if anything happened to Long's son, he'd feel guilty for the rest of his life. Spare no expense. He'd already asked Huang Tu to contact the J Inspection Bureau, but his biggest fear was that Lu and his people would murder him after hearing the news. On the way, Mr. Shui got a call. The kid was gone. He sighed in relief. As long as he was alive, everything was manageable. But now the question was where he'd gone, and why. Just like Long's son. But where is he? Mr. Shui dialed a number. Yi Wanqing's. Mrs. Yi, Long's son escaped. Escaped? Why was he locked up? I expect an explanation for this, Mr. Shui. she said, her voice full of anger. Understood. I'll look into it immediately. You better. Or I'll take this to the highest levels, and I'll let the chips fall where they may. Yi Wanqing hung up, sweat beaded on Mr. Shue's forehead. He knew Lu was finished this time. Regardless of the evidence or who they knew, he'd be punished. Huang Tu, I don't care how you do it, but I want all the dirt on Lu by morning. Mr. Shui was furious. Sure. Meanwhile, Xia sat at an open-air barbecue, eating skewers and drinking beer, unaware of the storm brewing at the J police station. Mr. Shui had stepped in personally in the middle of the night, and Jianghai City was about to be shaken to its core. The targets were Lu, Deputy Head Li, and their lawyer. Lu, this is from Deputy Head Li. He said he'll take care of your family. Is there no chance? Lu asked, his eyes desperate. This time, it's Mr. Shui himself. Even Deputy Headley can't protect you. I hope Deputy Headley keeps his word and looks after my family. Lu drank the liquid from the cup after the man left the secret room, oblivious. Xia savored Jianghai City's best street food, seafood stir-fry. This area was known for its food stalls, draft beer, meat skewers, and fresh stir-fries. You are my big apple. Xia's phone rang. Aunt, it's you. Why didn't you answer before? She complained. I didn't have any service, Xia explained. You're something else. You can escape from prison. Did you meet Yin Ye? Who's that? Xia asked. Then he remembered the Quicksand member saying his master was Yin, the world's best swordsman, before his death. Are you talking about my master? So Yin Ye was there. Come see me tomorrow. I have something to tell you. With that, she hung up, leaving Xia to enjoy his seafood and beer. The night grew later, but the crowd only grew larger. What had been empty tables when Xia arrived were now full. Fights had even started to break out, 4 people squeezed around a small table. Hey, are you using this? Xia looked up at 2 women. They were complete opposites. One wore a red dress, while the other was dressed casually, without makeup, but just as striking. Perfect figure, and a face that's 99 points, Xia thought, his X-ray vision activating involuntarily. The best of the best. Chapter 29, Most Direct. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xia was sure he'd hit the jackpot, like winning the lottery. Meeting a legendary beauty at a late-night food stall. It gave him the confidence to size up the 2 women with a knowing glance. These weren't just pretty girls, they were knockout beauties, each with a totally different vibe. One radiated a fresh, clean simplicity, while the other was like a vibrant, exotic flower. Creep, the girl in Nikes muttered, glaring at Xia as she sat down. It wasn't because she wanted to sit with him, but every other spot was taken. The more outgoing woman just smiled at Xia, saying nothing. Hey, beautiful, I feel like we've met before, Xia said, breaking the silence. Smooth talker, but that line's older than my grandma, the outgoing girl responded with a playful smile. Oh, really? Xia continued, I'd like to be a stone bridge, enduring the wind for 500 years, basking in the sun for 500 years, and getting drenched in the rain for 500 years, all just to see you walk across it and catch a glimpse of what you're wearing. Hee, the outgoing girl chuckled. You're interesting. I like that approach. But do you know who she is? That she gestured to the woman in Nikes, who was now fuming and glaring at Xia. Hey, you look sick, Xia said solemnly to the Nike-clad woman. I'm not sick, just sit there and be quiet, or I'll smack you, she snapped. Ever since they sat down, he'd been teasing them, staring at them with that obvious look. No, you've got it all wrong. You're actually sick. Insomnia? Bad dreams? Dry mouth? Hot temper? And your period's late, right? Xia explained quickly. You think I'm afraid to hit you? The Nike woman's eyes flashed, but the outgoing woman pulled her back. Bing Bing, calm down, he might be right, she said. Maybe he's actually a doctor. Him. He's just a sleazy perv, the Nike girl retorted. If he's a doctor, all his female patients are doomed. Not necessarily, little bro, tell us what's wrong with Bing Bing. If you're right, you'll get a reward, the outgoing girl said, her words and actions oozing with playful flirtation. She even leaned forward slightly as she spoke. What kind of reward? Xia Xia asked, looking at her expectantly. What kind of reward do you want? She replied, giving him a sultry look. If I'm right, you'll be my girl, Xia Xia declared matter-of-factly. That was it. The Nike girl was about to explode. She glared at Xia Xia, ready to slap him across the face, but before the slap could land, Xia Xia grabbed her hand, examining her palm intently. Your love line is pretty flat, but there are a few shallow marks recently, which means love is on its way. Your career line was rough at first, but there are faint signs of improvement, meaning your career's about to take off. Your lifeline is barely visible, which suggests you're in danger, but you'll pull through, Xia Xia said, his tone serious. Bottom line. You're missing me in your life. Hee hee, the outgoing girl snickered. That's it, I'm teaching you a lesson right now, the Nike girl said, seething. Okay, Bing Bing, don't make a scene. Let him diagnose you first, see if he's right, the outgoing woman urged. This was a public food stall, and if Bing Bing lost her temper, it would cause a scene. Besides, she found the young man interesting. Humph, the Nike girl huffed. Don't even think about getting away. Okay, Xia Xia said reluctantly, letting go of her hand. Alright, little brother, tell me, what's wrong with Bing Bing? If you're right, I'll give you a kiss, the outgoing girl said, winking. Xia Xia nodded. Well, if I have to suffer, I have to suffer. The two women were speechless. A beauty like her offering a kiss, and he acted like he was doing her a favor. If I'm not mistaken, you definitely won't live to see 30, Xia Xia said, looking at the Nike girl with a serious expression. What? The two women were stunned, not just by the statement, but because it hit close to home. How did you know? The outgoing girl asked, surprised. There are two meridians in the human body. In ancient martial arts, they're called the Ren and Du meridians, or the Yin and Yang meridians. Men are Yang, and women are Yin. In normal men, the Ren meridian is thicker than the Du meridian, while in women, the Du meridian is thicker than the Ren meridian, to balance the Yin and Yang, Xia Xia explained. If both meridians are thick, the person is neither male nor female, like an ancient eunuch. If someone only has one, it's called the nine heavens profound vessel, and there's maybe 1 in 100 million, and they won't live past 5. So, which one is Bing Bing? The outgoing girl asked anxiously. Neither. Her Du meridian is way too thick, and her Ren meridian is too thin. The Du meridian is still growing, even pushing the Ren meridian out of her body, which is why she's got a bad temper, dry mouth, and delayed periods, Xia Xia explained, recalling what his father had taught him. Then how do you know she won't live to 30? The outgoing girl pressed. 30 is just a ballpark number. People like her usually don't make it that far. But if you really investigate the disease, you'll find her lifespan is closer to 27. Xia Xia had scanned the Nike woman with his X-ray vision, and it was even worse than he'd thought. 27. That's next year, the outgoing girl said, looking at the Nike girl with concern. Ping, don't worry, who knows if he's telling the truth, the Nike girl said, a chill running down her spine. She didn't want to worry her friend, so she pretended to dismiss Xia Xia's words. But deep down, she knew her body better than anyone. Marry me, and I can save you, Xia Xia said, looking at her intently. In your dreams. I'd rather die than marry a scumbag like you, the Nike girl retorted, standing up and leaving. Bing Bing, wait. The outgoing girl called, hurrying after her. She stopped suddenly, turned back, and kissed Xia Xia on the forehead. "Here's my number. Call me." Looking at the business card in his hand, Xia Xia knew she wanted him to heal the Nike girl. But he had his own reservations. Her condition wouldn't be easy to treat, it would require them both to be naked in a pool. He would have to open up 78 acupuncture points on her body, some of which were private. If he so much as looked at those places, he'd naturally have to marry her. He wasn't that kind of player, not a scumbag at all. So far, he only had one girl, Tang Yen. After a quick meal, Xia Xia walked back to his place in the suburbs. He preferred walking to exercise his skills. Back home, he went to bed early. He was going to see his aunt the next day. He admired the inner strength method his father had passed down, called Taingsing. It was useless to meditate regularly, this mental method was improved by sleeping, and it couldn't be forced. Only during normal sleep would it cultivate automatically, helping him slowly break through each boundary. Sleep was a specific practice for him. His father had taught him since childhood to be free of distractions while sleeping. He had to maintain an ethereal state and enter the highest level of sleep. If sleep could be divided into 3 grades, the first would be long dreaming after falling asleep, the second would be ordinary sleep, with it being difficult to get up in the morning, the third would be Xia Xia's current state, where once asleep, the whole person seems to be in harmony with the world, completely integrated into heaven and earth. Some masters had studied suspended animation in order to enter deep sleep, but they were unable to achieve the highest effect, but all of that was simple for Xia Xia. His sleep state was the highest level of sleep. His father had trained him since childhood to maintain the sleep state. This method could not only prolong life but also speed up the absorption of heaven and earth aura. That was the real magic of Tianqingju. During deep sleep, Tianqingju would run automatically, making Xia Xia practice more than 10 times faster than others. He slept very comfortably. The next morning, he practiced Manyan Xianbu and Lingxi fingers several times. He took a shower, put on new clothes, and ran to the place where he was supposed to meet his aunt. After mastering Manyan Xianbu, he barely ever rode in cars. Walking wasn't tiring for him, and it let him practice the technique. Chapter 30, Nike Policewoman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xia Tian always thought of his aunt as a total badass. In his mind, his cousin was a mini badass, and his aunt was the real deal. She was tough as nails with everyone except his grandpa. Cross her, and you were toast. She used to complain that Xia Tian wasn't manly enough, that he'd never be able to protect his cousin or her when he grew up. Killing time. One day, Xia Tian fired up his phone. It immediately flashed the day's headlines, and a few caught his eye. First, a Jing University professor had publicly trashed the top student from Jianghai High School. The story included a video of Xia Tian's conversation with the professor. There was also a screenshot of Professor Pan threatening to blacklist anyone from their class because of Xia Tian, and the editorial commentary was way over the top. The whole thing blew up, and everyone was ripping into the professor. It wasn't long before he was trending nationwide. Those 3 professors were suspended pending an investigation before they could even get back to Kyoto. The second headline was about a massive crackdown by the Jianghai City Public Security Bureau. 37 people were arrested, and the ringleader, Lu Dadu, had committed suicide. Word was, the crackdown was a surprise attack led by Shui Wendi, a provincial official, himself. The third story was about a basketball prodigy at Jianghai University. He was sinking shots from way beyond the arc, but nobody could get a photo of him. The article broke down the whole thing, and even included the score from each quarter. Seeing all this, Xia Tian shook his head. All 3 stories were about him. He just wanted to fly under the radar. Looks like I need to keep a low profile, or I'll have paparazzi on my tail. Lichuan Hotel, it wasn't fancy, but the food was amazing. His aunt had taken him there before. Lichuan Hotel was right off the main commercial drag. Xia Tian was strolling down the street, killing time. Jianghai was expensive. His cash wouldn't get him far. Especially in those designer stores. The prices were insane. While window shopping, Xia Tian spotted someone he knew, the nurse who took care of him in the hospital. He still owed her $100. He was about to say hello when he saw someone snatch her purse, a mugging in broad daylight downtown. This guy had to be nuts. Looking at the crowd, Xia Tian figured this had to be a suicide mission, but he ran after the guy anyway. The victim was the nurse. Help! Thief! She yelled as she ran. Xia Tian was fast. He caught up to the mugger in seconds and tapped him on the arm. The guy's arm went numb, and he dropped the purse. Hey, dirtbag! You think you can get away with this? A voice boomed from the crowd, and a leg came flying at him. Xia Tian stepped back slightly and grabbed the leg. It's you! They both said at the same time. It was the Nike-wearing woman from last night. She was dressed down today, nothing flashy, but she was still gorgeous. I knew you were trouble. You're grabbing purses in broad daylight. Come with me to the station. The Nike woman pulled out handcuffs. Now Xia Tian understood, she was a cop. No wonder Kai asked if he knew who she was. Kai was warning him she was a cop. He should be careful. It wasn't me, Xia Tian protested. Yeah, right. And the purse just magically reappeared. The Nike woman's leg was still stuck in Xia Tian's grip, but she wasn't giving up the argument. Wow, cops like you must lock up a lot of innocent people, Xia Tian sighed. Let go of me, or I'm charging you with assaulting an officer. The Nike woman tried to yank her leg back, but it wouldn't budge. She could tell Xia Tian wasn't using much force, but she still couldn't pull free. The nurse ran up, out of breath. Thank you, she said, bowing to Xia Tian. That's when the Nike woman realized she'd jumped the gun. How else could Xia Tian have gotten the purse back so fast? No problem. Here you go. And this. Xia Tian pulled $100 bill from his pocket. What are you doing? You got my purse back. Why are you giving me money? The nurse looked confused, then figured Xia Tian was asking for a reward. She opened her purse to grab some cash. Don't you remember? I'm Xia Tian, from the hospital. You lent me $100. I said I'd pay you back. Xia Tian smiled. He knew what she was thinking. It's you. The nurse's face lit up. She'd thought he looked familiar, but it hadn't clicked. When she heard the name, it all came back. This was the Xia Tian who turned down $5 million without blinking. Okay, you two know each other. Great. Can you let go of my leg now? The Nike woman cut in. Xia Tian let her go. Nike turned and stalked off, glaring at him. Punk, you better hope I don't see you again, or you're gonna regret it. Thank you so much, the nurse said sweetly. I wanted to thank you properly before. You took such good care of me in the hospital. Xia Tian was grateful for her care. It was my job, the nurse said, looking up at Xia Tian. Are you busy for lunch? Let me treat you, to thank you for getting my purse back. I've got something on at noon. How about dinner? Xia Tian needed to see his aunt, but he still wanted to treat the nurse. I'm free, she said quickly. Great. Here's my number. Save it, and I'll call you this afternoon. Xia Tian gave her his number. I'll be waiting for your call. Don't forget. The nurse was fascinated by Xia Tian. He'd risked his life to save a kid he didn't even know, and then turned down reward money. Judging by his clothes, he wasn't rich. She'd heard about people who sacrificed themselves for others and couldn't be bought, but she'd never met one. These days, even hospitals ran on connections. You couldn't get a decent room without them. And if you needed surgery, you had to grease palms all the way up and down the chain. Some people would sell out their own parents for cash, but Xia Tian had turned down $5 million for some ambition. That's what she admired most. She wanted to know his secret. $5 million was a fortune. He was the first person she'd met who made her curious. Xia Tian chatted with the nurse for a while, then headed off. The nurse's name was Bai Yi. She was an intern at Shanghai City People's Hospital, just starting her career. Soon Xia Tian arrived at the Lichuan Hotel. It was busy. It was only 11 a.m., but people were already booking tables. Lichuan didn't take reservations over the phone. You had to show up and put down a deposit. He was about to open the door when someone bumped into him from behind. Luckily, Xia Tian was quick on his feet and dodged. Sorry. I'm in a rush, a familiar voice said. Nike cop, Xia Tian said, looking up. You again, creep. The Nike cop frowned. Are you stalking me? That's ridiculous. I was here first. Xia Tian couldn't believe how pushy she was. Whatever. I'm in a hurry. The Nike cop brushed past him and ran inside. Xia Tian shook his head. He really had some kind of connection with her. That was the third time they'd met. He walked into the Lichuan Hotel and headed up to the third floor. He found room 888. That was the address his aunt had given him, and it was almost time. His aunt had said to be there around 11. It was 10:50 a.m., so he wasn't late. He knew better than to be late. He knew her temper. If he showed up at noon, he'd be toast. Knock, knock, knock. He tapped lightly on the door of room 888. Xia Tian, what took you so long? Something came up on the way, Xia Tian stammered. Come on in. I've been waiting. His aunt waved him in. The moment he stepped inside, Xia Tian froze. He couldn't believe his eyes. What were the odds? There was someone he knew very well. Nike cop. Creep.